here, voice actor and audiobook narrator, and I am here today from my bedroom to talk to you about becoming an audiobook narrator. So, some things you need to know before you dive into this adventure. First thing you should know, audiobook narration is about acting, period. So if you're one of those people who hasn't had any acting training, doesn't have any acting experience at all, but you have a pretty voice, that's very nice, and that will help. Everyone likes to listen to a pretty voice, but you have to have acting experience before you can really dive into everything that this is all about. So, step number one, before anything else, get some acting training, preferably some acting experience, because you are going to need to bring that into the studio in order to convey the emotion that any author wants to try and get across. Plus, in many stories, you have multiple characters, and in most situations, it will be only one performer, only one narrator performing every single character in the book. And though huge variations are, dependent on your preference and your style as a narrator, it's very important that the reader can figure out who's talking. Another very important thing that you might want to have before you consider jumping into audiobook narration is you have to love, and I mean love, really, really love to read. You can't just love, listening to audiobooks, although, of course, that's also very, very important. You have to love and be good at reading out loud. So, if you haven't read a book since high school, you might want to get a little bit more practice and experience in that area before you start reading books out loud and recording them for other people to listen to. So consider the fact that you have to read an entire book, just you, usually under deadline, okay? If you don't like reading, you're going to hate your job, no matter how glamorous it might seem to be an audiobook narrator. Glamorous, it's not glamorous. You'll hate your job if you hate to read, because that's the majority of the job. Here's a little test for you. Sit down in a comfortable chair and read out loud for anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. The longer, the better. If you can sit still in a chair, time yourself. You don't have to record yourself, but just make sure you're reading everything out loud, every single word, for a long period of time. If the time passes and you get to the end of it and you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad, might be a good choice for you. If you get to the end of that time period, or you can't get to the end of that time period, and you feel like it really drags on, it's really impossible, and you'll never ever get used to it, you might want to reconsider, or else just, set yourself up to know that that is something that that's a challenge that you're going to have to overcome. The next thing you want to consider if you want to be an audiobook narrator is that it's not all creative time. There is actually a lot of technical expertise involved. Most narrators work from home studios, and a lot of the production is done themselves. Sometimes that's not the case, but usually, and more often than not, when you're starting out, as I believe it should be, you have to learn the ropes. You have to learn what's technically needed from you in order to produce a professional sounding recording. There's a lot that goes into that. There's a learning curve. It can be learned. There's, a wealth of information out there for you to choose from, plenty of excellent coaches, but you do have to be comfortable somewhat with technology. The next thing to consider if you want to go into audiobook narration It is an investment, money and time-wise. Can that investment pay off? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it is a lot to invest in up front. If you're not already a voice actor with a home studio, you're going to need to start from scratch and get a home studio. Sure, that can be done affordably. There's a lot of different price ranges there. But remember when I was talking about that technology before? Well, that technology is expensive. So prepare to spend some money setting up a home studio. You have to have a good space. That's the absolute number one top priority. You can spend all the money you want on expensive equipment, but if you don't have a quiet space to record in, there's very little that technology can do to fix that space. You can make your own studio from home. Sure, I did. Mine is in a closet in the middle of my apartment, and luckily I live on a fairly quiet street, although today, not so much. But there, I do have a lot of good equipment, and I have a lot of treatment in there, and I've invested a lot of money over the years. Not all at once, gradually, piece by piece. I started with a home studio just for voiceover commercial auditions, but when it comes to audiobooks, that sort of setup might not be good enough. Along with the monetary investment, it's also a time investment. Consider if you listen to audiobooks, which I sure hope that you do, they're long. Most audiobooks, I would say, full-length novels will range from 6 to 24 hours long. So, and obviously you can't just record, say, a 12-hour audiobook in a 12-hour period. It takes a whole lot longer than that. And you have to have the discipline and the time management skills to get yourself into the studio every day. Record the amount that you need to get recorded and meet your deadlines. Otherwise, if you can't meet your deadlines, some of which are kind of quick, others not so much, but if you're not meeting a deadline, then other people aren't meeting theirs. Your engineer, your producer, your director, your author, your publisher. Those people are dependent on you to get things in on time so that they can get their books released and out there for people to listen to and enjoy. It also takes time to learn all the things that you need to learn in order to become an audiobook narrator. There's a lot of research that needs to be done. There are classes that you can take. There are a bunch of coaches that can help you learn. But know that you will need to learn quite a few things before you can be competitive with other professional narrators. Now, it may sound like I'm trying to deter people from taking on this career. I absolutely am not. It is a great career to have if you can do it, if you have all the qualifications and you're willing to put in the time and the money and the passion and the dedication to do it. My next big point is you can make a living. A lot of professional voice actors are turned off from audiobooks because, and rightfully so, it is a lot of work for not necessarily as much money as, say, a national TV commercial would make. Now, I totally get this. I understand that going into a studio somewhere and, recording one line, having a 30-minute session for something that's going to play on national television for years to come, that is a nice gig to get. But if you are a professional voice actor, you also know that those gigs are few and far between. The thing about audiobooks is there is always work to be had. If you can do the work, if you're willing to put in the time, there is always work available. The audiobook industry is booming right now, and it will continue to grow. It continues to grow every single year. Not to say that it's not competitive. There are a lot of very talented narrators out there. But there are more books than there are narrators at this point. So, as long as you figure out everything that you need to do to become competitive, you will always have work, as long as you know where to look, how to get it, and you have the chops to get the work. The next thing you might want to know if you're going to be an audiobook narrator is that although it can be very lonely at times because you are sitting alone in a booth for hours a day just listening to the sound of your own voice, it is also a very social industry. There are a lot of different functions to attend, and it's actually necessary and profitable for you to attend those sessions and form those relationships, meet those people, make sure they remember you because they're the people who hire you. So if you are an introvert like myself, you're going to love the part where you sit in a booth all day and listen to the sound of your own voice. But once you get tired of that and you want to be among other like-minded people, there are plenty of opportunities for you to do so. And in fact, it's pretty much required of the job. The last thing to know about being an audiobook narrator is that it's a great job. If you do love to read, like I said before, and you love to act, and you want that to be your career, this is a really great way to do that. As long as you don't need the applause of an audience, and you're willing to sit in a booth by yourself all day reading stories, there's so many amazing stories that you get to be a part of, so many amazing characters that you get to play. So there are fans that tell you how much these stories have helped them in their lives. The authors that you work with are super talented and very sweet and just so grateful to have your talent involved in their work. It really is an amazing industry to be a part of, and I highly recommend it. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. There is a lot more involved, obviously, in becoming an audiobook narrator, but that's why there's a class available at Acting Studio Chicago. I hope you enjoyed this video because I put makeup on. Whether or not I have pants on, well, we may never know.